Hey guys, Bobby here from Redmond Digital Media, and as promised, I wanted to put together a video that was a little more in-depth on the Zhiyun Crane. Now, a little bit of background on me. I'm a wedding cinematographer based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I've been in this wedding video industry for about 10 years now. Now, up until this point, instead of the Zhiyun Crane, we've been using the Ronin M. This has been a great tool. Some things that I love about it, when we originally made the switch from a Glidecam, was that mainly I could hold it a lot longer. The Glidecam was on one arm. It was just oddly weighted. This let me distribute it to two hands. Now I am going to go back on that with the Zhiyun Crane, of course, but we'll get into that. It was a little bit heavier, but again, with this weight distributed, it worked better. Now I found that I was getting more usable shots. Now I would call what I would say is my shot percentage, my keepable shot percentage went up when I made the switch from the Glidecam to the Ronin. Now I know people who love the Glidecam and swear by it, and I will admit that when you get a perfect Glidecam shot, it cannot be beat by the Ronin and the Crane and everything else on the market. It is just so perfect and smooth. But for a wedding cinematographer, I think that your keep rate is important, and I could not find a way to always guarantee my Glidecam shots, and that's what ultimately made me switch to the Ronin. Now, the kind of shots that I am using this for are kind of everything. Now, we put the Sony a7S II currently with the 16-35, the Zeiss lens, on our Ronin M, and it pretty much stays there the entire day. Now, that does not mean that I'm using it the entire day. It is sitting on there. We have other cameras that we're using on tripods, monopods, sliders, etc. I think it's important not to overuse any one tool, and I think a Ronin or a stabilizer in general can really start to approach that overused point pretty quickly, but it does sit on there the entire day. We use it for a lot of establishing shots. We like to follow a bride and groom. We don't use it as much for like a slider shot. I know some people have kind of replaced their sliders with a Ronin or something similar. We haven't found that we're able to get as good of shots. You can get something solid, but we like it even smoother, so we're still sticking with our slider for things like that. But a lot of push in, a lot of pull out shots, tracking, and you can even imitate, like a jib. We've actually kind of started leaving our jib at home because we can get something very similar with the Ronin. So that's kind of what we're using our gimbal, whichever one that may be, for. And so we really want to know if the Crane can compete with the Ronin M. Now, of course, like I said, I'm a wedding cinematographer, so this really is going to be based around that. Not that you can't learn something. I'm sure anybody in any field will be able to take away something from this, but I also think it's important to know where I'm coming from. That is the industry that I'm most experienced in, so that's really where I'm going to be speaking from. Now, if you watch my other video, I kind of went over what prompted me to make the purchase of the Zhiyun Crane. Now, part of it, of course, was, like I said, a lightning deal on Amazon, so it was like $150 off, but it had been something I've been contemplating for maybe 2 months, something like that. And what really drew me to it was a few things. One, it's light. Like I mentioned, the Glidecam originally, which I used for probably 5 or 6 years, it basically limited how long I could take a shot for. So it was maybe 30 seconds or a minute, or I don't quite remember, but my arm would just start to shake and it would be visible, and that was kind of the end of the shot. Now the Ronin kind of upgraded that. I could do shots for a couple minutes. Of course, at the end of the day, my back was sore, but it did get great shots, and it was worth it in the end. Now the Zhiyun Crane is, like I said, very light. So, my hope is that it will be a little easier on my back and my arms, but still kind of be that middle ground where I can still get long shots with it, even though it is in its current form going to be used mainly with one hand. They do sell a handle that makes it a two-handed gimbal, essentially, like the Ronin. I'm not planning to use that, and that's kind of a good transition into reason number 2 for the Zhiyun Crane, is that it's smaller. The Ronin is an amazing tool, like I've said, and we get some killer shots with it, but it's big and it's kind of intrusive and it kind of makes people uneasy. They're not used to being around that. And especially for a wedding, you know, it's not a commercial, it's not a corporate shoot, it's not something where you can do 10 takes if, you know, an expression was off or somebody was caught off guard. So, you know, with weddings specifically, we're always looking to be as you know, small footprint, as minimal as possible. We don't want to intrude on their day, we want to capture it. Of course, we want to deliver something amazing, but ultimately it's their day. You know, it is the bride and groom's day, and we don't want to be in the way or, you know, doing anything that kind of alters that. So, you know, we've gotten by with the Ronin M. We've never had any complaints, but, you know, subconsciously you feel like you're a little bit in the way, and smaller is always better. Also tacked onto that is when we're traveling, you know, having something small, having something that breaks down completely and fits in this case is really nice. And lastly, and maybe one of the biggest things, is that if you attach a tripod plate or a set of, you know, miniature tripod legs even to the bottom of the Zhiyun Crane, you can set it down, which is the biggest downfall of the Ronin M. We almost went with another stabilizer when we bought the Ronin M 2 or so years ago, simply because you couldn't put it down. Now, here's the Ronin. Like I said, it's pretty big, but it's not terrible. And here's the Ronin stand, also pretty big, and you need to carry this everywhere. It's incredibly annoying, and again, in my opinion, it is the biggest downfall of the Ronin and the Ronin M, basically the Ronin series in its current form. So the Zhiyun Crane, I've seen people attach things to the bottom, and you can just set it down on a table, on the floor, etc., whether it's turned on or off, and that I think is huge. Especially for weddings, you need to be mobile, you need to be quick, you need to be, you know, small footprint again, and not having to carry around this stand allows me to have a free hand. I can carry another camera on a monopod, maybe something closer. Like I said, on the gimbal, we're always flying a wider lens usually. And so, you know, maybe I can put a camera with an 85 or something like that on a monopod, and that is going to help immensely in capturing the day appropriately. Now, of course, ultimately, I'm not willing to sacrifice quality. So even if it's smaller and it's lighter and I can set it down, if it's not stable or as stable as the Ronin M, then I'm gonna end up selling it. But that's really what I hope to get to the bottom of today. So first things first, of course, you need to do the setup. And I want to just right off the bat dispel a myth about the Ronin M that everybody seems to say is that, oh, you know, the setup is so lengthy and, oh, it's so cumbersome, you know, for the wedding day to have to set it up. And I just do not feel that way. When I've set up my Ronin, it is set up for one camera, one lens with a battery and a memory card, nothing else on top of it or anything like that. And I keep it like that. I keep it set up for that. When we go to a wedding, I take it off of the stand. I make sure it's turned off so I don't damage the motors. And I'm just kind of folding it up and setting it in my car. Now, like I said, there are some wires here and on the back, so you have to be careful you don't want to snag anything, but I'm not rebalancing. I'm not taking this apart except for when we travel. And even then, everything as far as what you would adjust is staying the same. So, you know, really with the Ronin, it's a setup one time, as I imagine is with the Zhiyun Crane. Of course, if you change lenses or something, that doesn't apply, but you know, you're setting it up and balancing it once. And then after that, you're just doing maybe some minor tweaks if you see that it's moved a little bit. But for the most part, you're just turning it on. So after it's balanced, I'll take it to a wedding. I'll throw a camera on there. I'll put it on its stand. I'll turn it on. And that's pretty much all that I need to do. Now, I expect the same with the Zhiyun Crane, but I do want to go over the initial balancing just to see what it's like. I have not opened this or done it before. And I'm going to put it up here on this tripod. Now, I'm not going to roll through this whole thing, and I'm also not going to give a step-by-step tutorial. There's tons of that on YouTube. That's actually what I looked at to figure this out. But, you know, I am going to time it just so you know. And again, I am going to be mounting the Sony a7S II with the 16-35 Zeiss f4 lens. And also, I will be mounting a Manfrotto quick release plate, which is a, you know, for me, that is something that I need on there, because I do need to be able to switch my cameras quickly, and although the Sony almost spends the entire day on there, I do need it in some other times, and I don't want to deal with screwing it in there each time. So I will let you know how it goes. All right, so it took me a little while, longer than I expected, that's for sure, but I was kind of going off of what I remembered from a video. I then busted out the instructions. I was also missing like a tool to get the Manfrotto quick release off of the Ronin. So, you know, all in all, I guess I don't know exactly how long it took. It was like 25 minutes maybe for that initial balance. But I think if I were doing it again, if I stripped this completely down, changed all the settings, I could probably do it in 15 minutes or so. Pretty similar to the Ronin. Both of these are toolless in the way that you make adjustments. You can see a knob right here. There's one here and here as well. And then of course how you're mounting the base plate or the camera below. Really similar with the Ronin. It was all toolless as well. So, you know, kind of no winner in that scenario. I think it's about the same time as the Ronin took me the first time as well. Okay, so there's different modes. I'll need to read through the instructions just to make sure, but I know there's 3 different modes. I was expecting like a beep or something, but at least now I've put it into mode 1. I'm not really sure which mode I'll use. Probably be changing. Mode 3 is the equivalent of what I would use with the Ronin, which is where, you know, if you were rotating with the Ronin or, you know, panning, tilting basically. So either one, panning or tilting, it would follow your movements. Now this has 3 modes. Like I said, mode 1 is locked basically. So I can rotate this around, I can do whatever, and it's just going to, I'm centering it with the joystick here, but I can tilt, I can pan, and it's gonna stay centered. You know, of course, I'm sure it could drift a little bit, and you can just also do movements with the joystick to get it back in place. Mode 2 is still locked, I believe, with the tilting, but it does pan now with me. You can see that. That's not with the joystick, that's panning as I twist. So here we are in mode 3. It's panning, and as you can see, it's also tilting. Probably not going to use mode 3 if I'm being honest, mainly because it feels a little kind of loose and unresponsive. You might be able to change that in the app, but I think if you had it, you know, where you're panning, but you can do the tilt because it does have this nice joystick on the back here. So, you know, I can do my, usually I'm not doing a pan and a tilt at the same time, though I guess I have the option. But I would do something, you know, maybe with the joystick, and this is nice and smooth here with that joystick tilting, where you're walking and slowly tilting down. Obviously I'm not walking, there's a bunch of stuff in front of me. But I think that would be very doable. And of course, you could just do it on lock mode too, where you're walking and controlling the tilt. It's a little weird for me to get used to, if I'm being honest. But I think that's more in coming from the Ronin and just being used to that. This is really smooth in, you know, insofar as the, you know, the rotating on the different motors, the different axes. So I really like that. It's definitely heavier than I expected. This setup was originally not doable on the, you know, when this was first released, it had a 1,200 gram limit. This setup is about 1,450 or so, somewhere in there. And then they just did a release where now this can hold 1,800 grams. So we're safely within that, but it is heavy. I didn't think that I would miss the two-handed nature of the Ronin, but I could see this, you know, definitely taking a toll and kind of going back to the days of the Glidecam, where it was, you know, it had a limit of 30 seconds or something. Now this is big enough, which is nice, that you can use two hands. So, you know, all in all, this actually might be better in the end. Like I said, it's a little weird to get used to, but with your two hands being here, I feel like you could hold something longer than two hands out here, like the Ronin. You can also kind of tuck your elbows in, which is nice. Now, one kind of disclaimer on any of these before I get to, you know, some actual shots and using it and my thoughts on how smooth it is in walking and whatnot, is that none of these, you know, no matter how much money you spend, none of these gimbals are going to be something where you can just, you know, plop your camera on, maybe you bounce it, maybe you don't, and just kind of go and it's going to give you amazing footage. It does rely on you and mainly on how you walk. That's a huge, huge, huge way to improve your shots, is to make sure that you're walking the right way. And I'm not really going to demonstrate, but basically what you're looking to do, or what I've found to be best, is you're walking heel to toe, so you're keeping your legs kind of on a straight line. I've always kept my knees a little bit bent. I've always kind of leaned back in my stance. But what you're looking to get rid of is, as you walk, you are going to some extent down, up, down, up. And this has 3 axes, but it needs a 4th axis if it's going to compensate for that movement. So that's what you're trying to get rid of. So I suggest sitting back in your stance and kind of gliding as much as you can with your body, trying to keep your hips in the same, you know, on the same level as you walk straight. One advantage with the Zhiyun Crane that I was really excited about is being able to flip it into inverted mode. Now the Ronin kind of is in inverted mode as is, and you kind of flip it into upright mode, but I could never really get it to work that well. It was actually really frustrating for me in the times that I would try to flip it and it just didn't end up working. So I'm gonna just try this here. Let's see. So yeah, all you do is you just kind of slowly rotate it around, and now, well, I'm not in the mode to follow. So this is funny, the joystick is still, you know, the other way, but I wouldn't imagine using the joystick as much. Let's put it in another. So now it's in inverted mode, as you can see there. And that, you know, I've gotten by with the Ronin as is, never had any major problems, but having the option between inverted and upright is something that's nice to have. And you can see it right, it kind of just flips right as you hit that 180-degree line. And now it's back to normal. And then one other thing that I like about this is in upright mode, I can see the screen better. That was always something, you know, most people are using a monitor with the Ronin, but for wedding films, it was just one more thing. It's one more thing to pack. It's one more thing to have batteries charged for. It's one more cord to have plugged in and attached to your camera. And it's one more thing that adds to the size of your rig. And like I said, for wedding films, I'm always trying to be as minimal as possible while still, you know, not sacrificing quality. So I never used a monitor with my Ronin, at least for wedding films. And I got by, I think I got tons of great shots. But I think having you know, a better view of your screen is always better as far as framing, as far as exposure. There were definitely times where I thought I was exposed correctly, and then when I really kind of framed the shot, and then when I got back, it turns out I was a little overexposed, a little underexposed. So I'm excited to have this screen right here. I can see it a lot better. You know, in inverted or underslung mode, it's gonna be not as easy to see, but that's kind of, you know, similar to what the Ronin is now. Now the Ronin certainly has kind of its place as well. I don't think that I would do, if I had the choice, that I would do, you know, like a corporate shoot or something with the Zhiyun Crane. Not that it's not capable, but I think, you know, there's a few things to be said about, you know, having the opportunity to do multiple takes, to have a monitor that's either, you know, capturing your footage in ProRes or something, or, you know, something where you can really see the color, you know, better than one of the Sony or the Canon screens. So there's definitely, you know, a place for that. There's also something to be said about going to a shoot for, you know, maybe a bigger corporate company or something and showing up with something small. I think it's silly that that is something we need to even think about. But you know, you don't want to be on the other end where you have a camera that's, you know, 40 pounds from the 80s, but, you know, to some extent you also need to look professional, and some of that is your appearance, the size of your rig kind of. Again, that's just for corporate stuff. For weddings, want to be as small as possible. Now, a few random things just to go over battery life. You know, I've heard, I think on their website, they say the Zhiyun Crane is about 6 hours. The Ronin was maybe that as well. I never had to switch on a wedding day batteries with the Ronin. I only have one actually. I definitely brought it down to 1 bar at times, but I imagine that's about similar. I don't expect to have to switch batteries with this either. I'm not using it. It's not turned on for 6 hours in a wedding day, but it does come with a second set of batteries, so that's nice. The app, I have not explored much the app with the Zhiyun Crane. I'm not thrilled with the app for the Ronin. It was always just kind of annoying, slow. It would give me like some errors randomly. That's not really a like make or break for either because I don't use it that often. One thing that's nice with the Zhiyun Crane is that from the app, you can use it like a Bluetooth remote to, you know, tilt, pan, etc. It does also come with a remote, but you know, if you didn't have it or something, that could be nice. All right, so I've now spent some time getting familiar with the Zhiyun Crane, trying out some shots, unfortunately not at a wedding as I wanted to make this video today, but with our stand-in model, Kodak, the Puggle, following her around in some shots around the house. And my findings are, it's really smooth. But like I said, you do need to also pay attention to how you're walking and your movements. You know, so really terrific there, really impressed with it. I find that the, you know, the panning and the tilting are a little more responsive than the Ronin, which I think ultimately is a good thing. I was having some issues with it, not actual problems, but just with me kind of not being used to that. So, you know, I would turn a little too quick and then it would turn too quick. Whereas with the Ronin, you know, there was a lot of give before it would kind of start gradually turning. That's something I'm going to look in the settings. It might be something that I've turned down with the Ronin, and if so, I'll probably do that with the Crane as well. But I tried it out in all 3 modes. I think really what I'm going to need to do is to just figure out, you know, what scenarios are best for which modes. But that's a little weird to get used to, and again, it's really a good thing, but the reason that it's weird to get used to is that the Ronin didn't have that, at least not to my knowledge or the way that I used it. So, you know, being able to lock it in place, I did some shots where I was pulling away from Kodak and I had it, you know, in mode 1 where it's basically locked and any panning or tilting needs to only be done with the joystick. So that was really nice. I also did kind of the equivalent of a jib shot in that mode. Really smooth, you know, and then I tried out the other modes as well, which I think will just need a little more getting used to, but they were really solid when you kind of get the hang of how it responds and what it will do. One thing I will say is that I noticed from me a little more wobble kind of back and forth, you know, kind of left and right wobble, which is similar to walking, you know, and having it bounce up and down. There's no compensation really for that. I think it's another thing where you kind of need to get used to it. Since it is only 1 handle and not 2, I think, you know, I need to maybe use 2 hands on the handle or something just to stabilize it. But I think that's more on me and not on the Crane. But yeah, overall, really impressed with the footage. It's not, you know, the most beautiful content, but that's not really what we were focused on. I brought it in close for something as well and tried kind of rotating around it a few times. I also did some kind of running through our living room, chasing Kodak around. So you can see that it's really smooth. I mean, it does a great job. And at this price point, it's almost unbeatable, I'd say. I do think there's certainly room for improvement on my end. And I hope to only get better with this kind of as time goes on. And just one more thing is everything that I shot here is shot in 24 frames a second. For our wedding films, we don't really use slow motion. It's just not our style. I don't really care for it. I know plenty of people who do, and I know tons of people who do amazing work who use it. So not to bash that by any means, but it's just not in our style. It's not what our couples want, and so it's not what we deliver. The only times that I will shoot in a higher frame rate are, you know, sometimes for detail shots, like a dress shot on the Ronin, now maybe the Crane, but something like that where I'm pulling back or pushing in, I might shoot in a higher frame and slow it down, but you wouldn't really know that. So anything with people mainly, I'm not shooting slow motion, I just don't care for it. So all of this was shot in 24 frames per second. It's not, you know, slowed down or anything like that. I know when you slow something down, you maybe have more information as far as stabilizing it in post, or just when you slow it down in general, it looks smoother because it's, you know, slower. So this is not that. This is 24 frames a second at, you know, real speed. So that's how I'm going to use it. So that's how I wanted to see, you know, how it would perform. So I think that's an important note to make here. So shooting higher frame rate and slowing it down would even get smoother. And, you know, this is also, you know, you could stabilize that slowed down footage in post as well. So kind of my conclusion, you know, both of these are great pieces of gear. They accomplish very similar things. The Zhiyun Crane seems to do it in a smaller package and at a much lower price point. I paid $470 for the Zhiyun Crane, and the Ronin M is almost triple that. I think it's around $1,200 to $1,400. The transition is a little weird going from two-handed to one-handed, getting used to the speeds of, you know, tilts, pans, things like that. And that might be adjustable within the app, and I am going to look into that. So I am not going to, you know, bust this out at a wedding tomorrow, but I do expect that given a little bit of time to get familiar, I'm definitely going to be leaning much more heavily on the Zhiyun Crane for weddings because of its size and still delivering a very smooth image. I probably will end up selling the Ronin if I'm being honest. It is a great tool. It has served us very well, but it is essentially the same thing in a bigger package and at a higher price point. So that is my really in-depth review of the Zhiyun Crane, specifically for wedding films and wedding cinematography. If you enjoyed this video, I would love to have you subscribe and follow along as we do more videos specific to wedding films and wedding cinematography, as well as travel videos and other things along the way as well. Thanks.